Now that they're free, that's the headline of a new joint investigation that reveals how the hundreds of Venezuelan men deported by the Trump administration to El Salvador, then sent to Venezuela.
Tonight on Breaking Truth Network, we expose a story so disturbing, so brutal, it's shaking the foundations of U.S. immigration policy. Hundreds of Venezuelan men were deported under Trump's orders. But instead of freedom, they were sent into hell itself. El Salvador's CECOT prison, what happened inside is now being called torture. And the U.S. knew. Investigative reporters from ProPublica, Texas Tribune, and Rebel Alliance Investigates have uncovered the stories of deported men who say they were beaten, shackled, and left for dead. Now freed and back in Venezuela, they're finally speaking out.
With batons. The prison director told us, "Welcome to hell, where you enter alive and leave dead."
They forced us to kneel against our will, beating us. There were many people screaming, asking for help, for mercy. The shackles were so tight, and they injured our ankles. Many were even bleeding because we were cutting ourselves with the shackles. They would say to us crudely, "Walk, you piece of..." I remember telling an officer I can't walk. If you loosen the shackles, I can cooperate, but I can't walk. I have a medical condition. I'm hypertensive. I was beaten to the point of fainting. They dragged me until we got to the cell block. Then they threw me down. My head hit the floor. I woke up and asked God, "Why am I here?"
They took us to solitary confinement. They called it the hole. I got hit in my private parts, you could say. From a kick I received, I am still suffering from it. On April 5th, there was a major beating, where they beat one of our fellow inmates who was a kid. They pepper sprayed into his mouth, and he started convulsing on the floor. He was foaming at the mouth. They told us he had died, but thank God he is alive. He came back to us. When the Red Cross came for the first time, we spoke out, but speaking out cost us a brutal beating.
Inside El Salvador's mega prison, these men say they were welcomed to hell. Their heads smashed into concrete, shackles tearing into their ankles, guards beating them unconscious.
When we landed in El Salvador, I was by a window and I saw thousands of officers around the plane. I felt like my world had collapsed. They started putting 10 to 15 people in each cell. I tried to bathe secretly and they saw me. They dragged me to the wall, the island, and started beating me. And one officer kept hitting me on the ears as if to disorient me. And then on the temple, right here, they beat me for nearly 2 hours. Every guard on duty would take turns hitting you. Even the prison director hit us many times. I couldn't see well out of one eye because of the beatings to the head.
When the Red Cross finally came, inmates tried to speak up. The price? A brutal beating. Rubber bullets, pepper spray, convulsions, suicides attempted. And for what?
I don't deny that I used to support President Nayib Bukele's policies to fight crime. I never imagined that I would one day experience this injustice myself. It has been a dirty policy. The United States sent us to El Salvador so that El Salvador could do the dirty work that the U.S. couldn't. And justice will only come through the truths and testimonies of each of us.
Over 230 Venezuelans were deported to El Salvador under the Trump administration. But here's the truth. 197 of them had no criminal record in the U.S. internal government documents. Show the Trump administration knew this.
How many prioritizing going after the worst of the worst, or are you now arresting anyone who is here?
We're doing the worst of the worst always first.
Yes.
And I think it's great government, what we've done. And nobody can ever forget what this group of people, Biden or whoever it was, because it probably wasn't even Biden. I don't think he knew what the hell he was doing. But Biden, whoever it was, what this group of people, a small group that circled the Resolute desk, what they did to this country. Think of it, what your time, all the time you have to waste doing this. It's an unforced error. We had nothing. We had no problem with this.
But behind the scenes, they were just migrants. Some were asylum seekers. Some had families. Few had convictions. None deserved what came next. Investigative reporter Peril Treviso spent months interviewing families, combing through records in the US, Venezuela, Chile, Colombia, and Peru, building the most comprehensive picture of what really happened.
Of the more than 230 men who were sent to Venezuela, you discovered at least 197 had not been convicted of crimes in the U.S., and that the Trump administration was aware of this. As President Trump was saying, we're going after the worst of the worst, the rapists and the murderers. Perla.
Yeah, so we obtained, in addition to the background information that I described, we also obtained internal government record that showed how the government itself was labeling them, whether they had criminal convictions in the U.S., whether they had pending charges, or they were deemed immigration violators, meaning they had only violated immigration laws. And so not only does this match what others had reported, but it shows that the administration itself knew, even when they were portraying them as the violent criminals that deserve to be sent to a prison in a country that was not their own, potentially indefinitely, they actually knew that the vast majority did not have convictions in the U.S. And we found that, from those 6, half a dozen of them had convictions for what would be deemed violent crimes.
The U.S. State Department says it's not responsible. El Salvador says the U.S. is. So who answers for the torture? Who owns the human rights violations?
It has been a dirty policy. The United States sent us to El Salvador so that El Salvador could do the dirty work that the U.S. couldn't. And justice will only come through the truths and testimonies of each of us.
This is more than a policy failure. It's a moral collapse. A chapter the U.S. government once buried, but these men survived to make sure it never is. Like, share, and subscribe to Breaking Truth Network. The truth matters, even when it hurts.